Hi folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode, Lesser Shades of Evil. Folks, this game fits into a very interesting niche that not a whole lot of games aspire to. This is a science fiction, fantasy, post-apocalyptic role-playing game. That's a pretty big mouthful, so let's talk about the setting in general as we get into this. This is interesting because it actually deals with the far future of Earth, where we, or rather a certain subset of people, have learned how to download their consciousnesses into these physical embodiments. And these embodiments then are stored, and you have various and sundry other bodies that you have pre-prepared ahead of time, either through alchemal preparation or a certain genetic marker or a certain technological marker that you can now take over and basically run around like they're little hand puppets for you to run all over Earth with. This is a very dark game. It sort of reminds me a little bit in terms of tone and setting of Engel, which was a German role-playing game translated by White Wolf into a D20 system right when D20 was starting to boom. It is our world so far ahead that you can recognize it as our world, but not much else. There was the war between a very powerful family where some of the children and some of the siblings rebelled against the father figure who developed, and the family had developed these transfer devices. And in essence, you play one of these Angelians or Angelons, I'm not exactly sure how you would say that in essence run the world. And some of the Angelians have broken away. Some still serve the main family. Some serve themselves. Some serve the forces of darkness, which were the rebel families. There's also the possibility of playing essentially organic robots that were made, normal people, although the game is very heavily skewed, and I think intended for you to play these Angelians. The dice system for this, the mechanic, is actually very interesting. You can tell there was a lot of thought that went into this, where you determine a dice pool that you use for a situation, but then depending on how many dice you have, where you use either a pool of 6-sided die, 10-sided die, or 20-sided die. And obviously, the lower the die you have, the more of them you get to use, but the less chance for really spectacular successes you have. So there's a certain mini-game almost involved in figuring out which kind of die pool you want to use for this. Character creation honestly looks a little on the laborious side, where you have a very large pool of points that you draw from and you develop your character from the ground up. Your character has passions and it has a dark side as well. This is a very interesting game, a fantastic setting, a very interesting background, very, very dark, a very, very dark future on Earth, with a mechanic that, while it works and while it's interesting, I'm not all that interested in playing because it's a little heavy and a little crunchy for me. If you like heavy, crunchy systems where you have to sort of figure out the die pool you need to use, folks, this is for you. It's a different take on science fiction, and it's a very interesting and different take on a post-apocalyptic setting. I highly recommend. If you have any questions or comments or things you'd like to see us review, please feel free to contact us at knwiegel@yahoo.com. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.